Hi, everybody. Thank you, Darkroom, for hosting tonight. As James so kindly introduced, I'm a fractional CMO. I have a company called the Sprout Collective, and my goal is to make founders' lives easier. I also have a skincare business that I bootstrapped and made a lot of mistakes with. And so I sort of bring the knowledge of being a founder and those learnings to my clients. One thing that Harry touched on is that there's definitely been a lot of changes recently, right? And marketing has become a little bit more volatile than I think we all sort of got used to. Digital costs have increased. Social media has become like a major player for discovery and conversion. Investors are focused on profit. iOS 14 kind of screwed up everything. Even GA4 has been kind of a cluster. And just a lot of other macro changes with the economy, as we touched on. I think there's two big things that kind of parlay into these three big impossible questions that we're going to answer today. Having at least two sales channels and a diverse marketing mix. And the reason that's important is because as D2C gets more expensive, having retail or Amazon or other channels is really key to having that diversity. And then same thing with your marketing, right? If you're dependent on any one channel, it kind of puts you in a pickle. So the idea is just have a little bit of diversity in your sales and marketing channels and make sure that you've got everything covered. What I'm most excited to talk about are these three impossible questions. So I talk to founders, like a lot of you, some of you are, all the time, right? Several times a day, all week, all month. And these are sort of the three questions that I'm getting constantly right now. So I thought it would be great to share those insights with all of you. So number one, what % of my revenue should come from paid versus organic marketing? It depends. There's really no one size fits all. And I think it's very easy to look at what a competitor is doing or look at what your industry is doing and think that that is the way to do it. And it's really important to focus on what makes you unique and your brand unique and not just like look at what everybody else is doing, right? If I told you the number is 40%, does that like mean anything to anybody? No, it doesn't, because it depends on what you're doing. And so there's a lot of factors that can go into figuring out how you break that down that works for your brand. So the key things that I think are really important to get started, and this obviously can be a more complex process that I could talk about for 3 days, is, think about your input versus your output, right? Like what's going in? It's humans, it's spend, it's effort, it's mental space, right? Mental capacity. I think also evaluating your spend and revenue. What are you currently doing, right? Like, are you currently spending nothing on organic? Are you currently spending 99% of your budget on, paid, meta ads? So really understand like, where are you today? And where do you want to be? And then using historical data to build a forecast with a few scenarios. So if you're looking to change, like if you're not happy with where your percentages are today, the idea is to evolve that, right? And that might mean adding in new channels. It might mean adding in a sales channel. It might mean betting bigger on brand. It might mean betting bigger on digital. It depends where you are today. And so really building a historical forecast based on seasonality, all the things you sort of know to be true, and then looking at where you want to be, I think is really key to help architect how you decide that this is the right breakdown of paid and organic for your business. And by the way, as a reminder, organic marketing is not free. It usually costs humans and time and all sorts of other things, but it's still a really important part of marketing, which we'll touch on in a sec. And so here's sort of a checklist that I think about to make sure that you're focused on the right things. All three pillars: brand, acquisition, and retention, right? And some brands index heavier on one versus the other. But it's really important to have all three, right? And product is actually something that I didn't put on the slide, but it's another really key pillar to your ecosystem, right? Like you've got to have great product. Ideally, you're having new product and iterative product that your customers get excited about to help that retention and LTV metric. But having a strong brand is, I think, something that can often get overlooked, but especially with Gen Z, and sort of where marketing is today, having a really strong brand and the why. Like, why is someone buying Obvi instead of Vital Proteins? Is it because of the flavor, as we talked on? I'm just using them as an example because they're here and kind enough to share their story. But, why is someone buying from you versus some other brand in your category? I think that's really important to understand and make sure that your whole team understands. But ultimately, if you have a really strong brand and you understand your why and your team understands your why, hopefully it also makes your acquisition and retention efforts a lot more efficient. Know your customer. Who is your customer? I get this a lot. People are like, I want to market to everyone. Well, so does everybody, but it's not really an effective strategy, right? Like you have limited resources, limited time, limited budgets. And so who is your core customer? And some of the ways to go about that, if you haven't done this recently, even if you've done it before, I think it's nice to check in maybe quarterly or every 6 months or so. A couple things that I found really helpful are surveys and focus groups. Lots of different ways to do them. We have a couple suggestions up here and things to ask them about in terms of figuring out who they are, where they shop, how you could maybe speak to them in a different way. Something that a lot of clients and brands that I work with have had a lot of success with is the order confirmation page and using that as a data collection platform. You can just do it in Shopify. It's pretty straightforward, but I'm really thinking about like, what are the things that you're dying to know and what are those moments of engagement from your customers that you can try to capture that from without being annoying, right? Or ruining their purchase journey. And optimizing your own channels, right? Your own channels, again, like I said, they're not actually free, but they are organic and it's a really, really, really important part of your brand building. So some tips that I have, like what are your gateway products versus your repeat, right? So if you're looking at your flows, you have a welcome flow, you've got post-purchase flow, a repeat customer flow, making sure you're looking at your data to know like what are the most popular purchase products for that cohort of your customer base is a really nice tie-in to just update your CRM flows, which I recommend looking at least once a quarter. SMS can be a really amazing tool. I think a lot of brands still misuse it and use it in a way that's really pushing content and sales rather than providing recipes or really funny entertainment or just like really engaging people and creating a conversation. I think SMS has evolved from like a push platform to a conversation tool. That can also be integrated with your customer care. Having partnerships and collaborations, really, really, really blowing up your social media, especially with the younger generations, which I imagine most of us are targeting. We all live on our phones, we all live on social media, and even if it's top of funnel and you can't always see the data track, it's just so critical to have a really strong content strategy and social media strategy. Just talking to your Facebook reps, your TikTok reps, like get me access to whatever's new, right? Like TikTok shopping and whatever other, platforms and tools are coming out with, I think is just so key to be early and have a good relationship, especially if it's a platform that you're spending a lot of time or money on. Again, it could be on the organic or paid side of that platform, but just have a good relationship, work that relationship, see what else you can get out of it. And then A/B testing. So landing pages, website, I was having conversations with people here earlier tonight, testing free shipping thresholds, like adding, GWPs at checkout or having just a few cheaper price point items that are purely for cart value. So just making sure you're sort of dotting your I's on everything that you own. Most of this is purely just time and labor. It's not actually dollars out of pocket. So again, weighing that with whatever else you have going on in your business, evaluating where you should put the time and resources. But those are all things that you could go back to your teams tomorrow and start trying to like investigate if it's something that's on your mind. Another really big question. This is actually probably my favorite because it's a really impossible question, right? I get this from founders all the time. They're like, I want to grow. I want to make money. I want to be profitable. I want to cut spend. I want to reduce my team size. And I don't want to work that hard. And I'm not implying that founders don't want to work that hard. They do. But it's like they're trying to balance all these different metrics, right? And we can all probably agree that you literally can't do all of them at the same time. So recognizing that, what are the most important things you need to do? And it can vary throughout the year, right? You could say, hey, I'm just kidding, magic. But you could say, hey, like in Q1, while CPMs are low, I'm going to fill my funnel. I'm going to spend more. I'm going to have a lower ROAS. I'm going to optimize for traffic. And then in maybe it's a swimwear brand. And so summer is like a huge season, right? And so in the summer, maybe you're really focused on profit, right? And you know that you're going to convert all those people. That's going to be a really cash flow positive time. And I think just really balancing how you think about these metrics is so, so, so important. And there is not one answer. It's what matters to you. Are you looking to sell your business? Are you looking to raise money? Like what is sort of that goal that you're trying to work towards? And this choice should ladder to that goal, right? You're not working in a silo. You're trying to like rally your troops and like build to the same goal. So knowing what that is, and it doesn't have to be the same thing every month, which I know I mentioned, but I think it's really important. I think people look at 12-month forecasts and they're like, oh, I'm like not profitable for the year, but you might have profitable months and that's still good to get on that path if your ultimate goal is profitability over the course of a year. So I think Harry had a lot of good tips on, managing some of those operational pieces. But this to me is like so, so, so core because when brands try to do all of this at the same time, you actually end up paralyzed. You just can't. And then you end up, it's fine to have some thresholds and some boundaries for the metrics that you're not prioritizing so that you're still not like spending wildly or growing wildly or whatever the case may be or being out of control, but know your goal, stay really focused and make sure that your whole team is aligned. And failure is okay, right? Like to grow and diversify your sales channels and diversify your marketing channels takes time and effort and testing. And some of that is going to yield amazing results and some of that is going to suck. And it's really frustrating, but it's really important for your team and for you to lead from a place where failure is okay. Not all the time, not at certain expense levels, but it's okay, right? Like you have to like fail to learn, and I think that's really important. The goal isn't to fail, but we do have to fail to learn and move forward. So I like keeping that in mind because it plays to culture. Speaking of culture, this is another favorite question. What should my marketing team look like? Literally, it's a trick question because every company is different. Your strategy is different. Your goals are different. There's so many things that go into building a team and deciding on what matters most to you. So like we talked about, right? Like what is your actual marketing strategy? Are you betting big on partnerships and collaborations or influencer or VIP relations or paid media or CRM or retention or all the other things that go into your marketing mix? Or maybe you really want to build out a new sales channel and you decide that's what you want to bet on, right? You want to build out retail and that's new for your business. That's cool. That's great. But your team should connect to that, right? So what are your goals and what's your strategy? What KPI did you land on? Are you fighting for profit? Are you fighting for top line growth? Are you fighting to just control cost and preserve cash? Whatever that goal is, your team should obviously reflect that. And there's lots of ways to build, right? There's agencies, there's in-house, there's freelancers, there's fractional, but it's really important that you're factoring in all these things. The cash in the bank and your stage, right? So like if you just raise like $30 million or even $2 million and you want to like invest in some of these new channels and you need team to do that, go for it. It's not supposed to be scary, but you do need to keep in mind that, you know, cash only lasts so long and you want to make sure that you're kind of factoring in your top line as well. But those are two things that what stage you're at and how much cash you have in the bank are also things that I would factor in as you think about how you're forecasting out, whether it's 12, 14, 12, 24, 36 months. And then culture. I think culture is super, super important. This seems like a pretty fun group based on the conversations I've had. But, do you want your team working 12, 16-hour days, or do you want them to be inspired by the world they're living in? And so that also impacts team, right? Like, are you hiring a really deep team? Are you running really lean? There's no right answer, but it's about knowing how you want to run your company and how you want to run your team and making sure that you have it really well. It's your goals and your team are matching, right? So those are my 3 impossible questions. No one size fits all. Know your brand, know your customer, know why you're different. I think that's huge and something that often gets buried when we're like in the weeds every day. Have the right team and make sure to celebrate the wins.